best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God?
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
This hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. Let's start afresh. Let's begin to listen to one another again. Hear one another. See one another. Show respect to one another.
He's a good man. And in my world, that's the best thing you can say about somebody. I think he's the perfect person for the time.
Today, we mark the swearing in of Vice President Kamala Harris.
So help me God.
Don't tell me things can't change.
I believe Kamala is the key to uniting us. Being a woman of color and the diversity that she brings to this office is what we need as a country.
True strength is measured not by who you beat down, it is measured by who you lift up.
I am one of the 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the shadows of the United States. I am actually very full of hope because I really think that change is fast approaching.
History, faith, and reason show the way. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors.
I don't think that, our country can take much more infighting. I'm an American before I'm a Republican, and so I want him to do well. I want our country to be successful.
I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans.
Good evening. It was a day of new beginnings and sacred traditions. The peaceful transition of power from one president to the next. And for the very first time, the Vice President of the United States is a woman. At 78, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr. of Delaware is the oldest man ever to serve as president and one of the most experienced. 56-year-old Kamala Davy Harris of California makes history, not only as the first female vice president, but the first Black and South Asian American as well. They were sworn in with unprecedented security at the U.S. Capitol 2 weeks after it was stormed by supporters of President Trump. This new administration faces a world of challenges, chief among them the pandemic that has killed more than 400,000 Americans and sharply limited the inaugural ceremonies. Well, tonight, we introduce you to the 46th president and the 49th vice president with the help of the people who know them best, their closest friends. Would you say Joe Biden is ready to be president of the United States?
Absolutely. He's absolutely ready.
Cindy McCain was introduced to her husband, the late Senator John McCain, by now First Lady Jill Biden.
And I'm just so grateful that they did introduce me because love of my life.
Still, it was a surprise when the lifelong Republican endorsed Joe Biden for president. Arizona is a pretty red state. A Democrat has only won for president there twice since 1948. Do you think your endorsement helped Joe Biden win?
I hope I did. I mean, that's why I did it. But I also think it was a change in the country. We saw people here, especially suburban people, really frustrated with what was going on. And they stepped across the line like I did. And we voted together on this to make sure to do it for what was right for our children and for our grandchildren.
The children raised in this Wilmington neighborhood remember President Biden as their lifeguard back in 1962.
Who here is going to be president someday? Raise it. All right.
This pool that now bears his name is where Delaware NAACP President Richard Mouse Smith first met Joe Biden. So what was your first impression of Joe Biden?
Just this skinny, like I was, white guy pop up one day with a smile on his face.
The two became fast friends. Joe Biden even served as Mouse's best man.
Mouse, thank you very, very much.
I took him in the black community, in the projects and stuff. He basically learned how to deal with black folks.
Fred Sears is a close college friend of the president from the University of Delaware.
He's always understood people. I always tell the story that when Bo passed away, and I went to the funeral and I was able to, the line was ridiculous.
Bo Biden, the president's oldest son, died after battling brain cancer in 2015.
And when I finished going through the line, I stood on the side and watched these people coming up to see him and console him. And he's consoling them when he's the one standing there whose son just died a few days before. But that's the kind of person Joe is.
Losing their son and, of course, my husband to the same disease is, it's mind-boggling.
I always thought of John as a brother.
Joe was so kind to it. He had just experienced it, and Joe was so kind.
I trusted John with my life.
What does that tell you about the character of Joe Biden?
It tells me that he's a good man. And in my world, that's the best thing you can say about somebody, is that he's a good man, a good person.
The challenges President Joe Biden faces on day one are substantial. A global pandemic, an embattled economy, calls for racial justice, and a growing threat of domestic terrorism.
We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this.
Would you say a President Joe Biden is uniquely qualified to meet this moment that we're in right now?
I do. I think he's the perfect person for the time.
My whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause.
Joe Biden been ready to be president since he was 29 years old.
Together, we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness.
And all the experience and everything he's been through has just made him ready for this job.
May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us.
He is absolutely ready.
One of the most important ingredients in trust is truth.
She's always had a certain magnetism, a certain charisma. She is down to earth, she's humble, she still loves to laugh. She's the same Kamala I have always known.
Stacey Johnson Batiste and Kamala Harris have been the best of friends since they were 5 years old. They went to the same kindergarten in California.
I remember us running around a lot, swinging on swings, slides.
Please raise your right hand.
Today we see Kamala Harris, our now vice president, and she exudes confidence. Was she always a confident little kid? Was she a shy little kid?
She's never been shy. She has always been kind. She would stand up for what's right.
Do you have an example of her standing up for what's right?
So we had worked on a clay project, and this boy had taken mine, threw it on the ground, and it, broke. Kamala got so mad that she got in between him and me, said some words, and he got so mad that he picked up either a piece of a rock or a brick and hit her on the head. To this day, she still has a small scar from that.
Harris took that fearlessness to Howard University in Washington, D.C. As a freshman, she challenged tradition by running for class president, a position typically held by men.
I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. I mean, it's all the guys that are, running for office, and she said, so what? I'm not going to allow someone else to define who I am. I'll never forget that.
Melanie Wilcox Miles met Harris her first week on campus. It was the beginning of a 40-year-long friendship. Harris was a bridesmaid at her wedding and is her son's godmother.
Did you have a time when you thought, I really like her and we're really going to be friends?
Absolutely. Kamala is just so full of life. She cracks a great joke. There was an immediate connection, and we're going to be fast friends.
Wilcox Miles invited Harris to join Alpha Kappa Alpha, the AKAs, the first sorority established by Black women.
We used to have this saying, Gayle, which was, we're not looking to make stars out of girls. We want them to already be stars. And Kamala was one of those.
Harris's star kept rising. From San Francisco District Attorney,
I did not run because I wanted to be the first woman. I ran because I believed I could do the job better.
To Attorney General of California.
Congratulations, Attorney General.
That's when she met her future husband, Doug Imhoff. He tells the story of the first time Harris met his children at a restaurant.
I kind of took an extended leave
to the restroom to let them spend some time together. And I came back, and they're just whooping it up and laughing, and I said, okay.
He's been by her side ever since. When she became a U.S. Senator,
I think you've made it clear, sir, that you've not looked at the evidence, and we can move on. So help me God.
And today, as Harris made history, becoming the first female vice president of the United States.
Why was it important for you to be at the inauguration?
She and I have been there for each other every step of the way of our lives, so I have to be there.
We've just been through part of the roughest couple of weeks, I think, in the country's history. You know, some would say we're more divided than ever before. Do you think she's up for the task?
I believe Kamala is the key to uniting us. I believe that being a woman of color, I believe that the diversity that she brings to this office is what we need as a country.
In his inaugural address, President Biden called for unity. But there's no greater sign of America's deep divisions than President Trump's decision to skip the swearing in of his successor. Mr. Trump has never accepted his defeat, and neither have many of his supporters.
You're listening to AM 1050.
15 below wind chill. Ouch.
We first came to Kenosha in early 2017 to find out why this once staunchly blue county voted for a Republican president for the first time in 44 years.
President Trump, that sounds kind of cool saying it, doesn't it? President Trump.
Different things about Kenosha and Wisconsin.
Christy Koschke is a teacher. Georgiana Counterman comes from a family of union workers.
I figured I'll take a chance on him.
Not this time around. Although Kenosha County voted for Mr. Trump again in 2020, Georgiana Counterman did not.
This man represents the evil in our country.
She voted not so much for Joe Biden as against Donald Trump, pitting her not only against neighbors, but her own husband, who still supports Mr. Trump. You've been married 42 years. Is this the biggest crisis in your marriage?
Yes.
She says her husband refuses to accept Joe Biden won the election, and that may be the biggest hurdle the new president has to overcome. Although more than 60 challenges to the election have been rejected by courts around the country, including the Supreme Court, millions still believe the election was stolen. Former Kenosha Mayor Pat Moran is one of them. You don't believe that President Biden won this election?
I do not. I have no evidence. I'm not suggesting I do, but in my heart, I really do not.
Moran points to the huge crowds he saw at Trump rallies, like the one he attended just before the election.
I think, and I know this sounds crazy, that Trump is a modern-day prophet, sending a wake-up call to America about how we've turned our back on God.
And we're going to have to fight much harder.
And he stands by Mr. Trump even after the outgoing president was impeached for inciting the attack at the Capitol.
It was very unfortunate what happened at the Capitol building. Nobody condones that type of behavior. I think anybody that breaks the law, there's a responsibility and there should be a consequence. Just like the people that burned down my city.
Moran is talking about what happened in Kenosha last summer. Downtown buildings still bear scars of the unrest sparked after a white police officer shot a black man, Jacob Blake, in the back, multiple times, paralyzing him. There were peaceful protests, but there was also violence and looting. It drove radio personality Lou Ragani to choose Mr. Trump.
I like the idea of law and order, and I voted for that. I voted for law and order. WLIP.com, coast to coast.
Ragani doesn't trust the election results either. How do you bridge a divide when you have people who believe the election was fraudulent? Atifa Robinson is a community advocate.
You start off by just having the conversation like we are doing now. If Trump did win, what exactly did you want Trump to do? Well, those are some of the same things that Joe Biden can now do in 2021.
Georgiana, will your marriage survive this?
I believe so, because 40 years into a marriage, I'll be damned if Trump's gonna break it up.
Christy Koschke, who voted for Mr. Trump twice, says she's willing to give President Biden a chance. She's tired of the discord.
You know, it's not like Satan got elected. We're gonna be okay.
I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans.
Do you think he can do that?
I certainly hope so. You know, I'm an American before I'm a Republican, and so I want him to do well. I want our country to be successful.
President Biden has a long to-do list, and near the top is immigration. On his first day in office, he lifted the Muslim travel ban. He's proposing a path to citizenship for millions of undocumented people, and he's expected to take action to help reunite migrant families separated at the border. Welcome news for many immigrants and their children.
Their faces said it all. It was 2017, and these fifth graders were afraid. They were 10 and 11 years old, and Donald Trump was about to become president.
I actually feel really scared, but I try not to think about it. I think there has been an increase of racist people.
Most of them are children of immigrants and said they sometimes felt the president's words were a targeted attack.
When Mexico sends its people, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists. We have to have a temporary ban on Muslims coming into this country.
I just hear Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are bad. I just feel really heartbroken.
2 weeks ago, we brought some of those children, all of them American citizens, back in for interviews.
You were worried about the future.
Yeah.
Back then, Sana, whose parents hail from Inner Mongolia, said she felt powerless in the face of Trump's anti-immigrant tirades.
I'm just like a small person in a big world.
Now, 14 years old, Sana is not feeling small anymore.
I took part in a Black Lives Matter march. It was so incredible to see all of these people from different groups all coming together to want to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore.
Norah, whose parents are from Indonesia, says the last 4 years under Mr. Trump have been difficult.
I have been living in fear. It made me feel unsafe as a Muslim woman living here in America.
But Norah says everything feels different about Inauguration Day this time around.
Hopefully Biden can make us minorities feel safer living here in America.
14-year-old Lynn, who was visiting her grandparents in Togo, West Africa when we interviewed her, says she's haunted by television images of the Trump administration's tough border policies.
You know, seeing people on the news being separated from their parents, being put in cages, I feel like that's something a kid should never have to go through.
Those images also deeply affected Larissa Martinez. 4 years ago, she was a proud high school valedictorian headed to Yale University on full scholarship. It was then she shared a deep secret.
I am one of the 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the shadows of the United States.
Larissa flew from Mexico to Texas in 2010 with her mother and sister, who are still undocumented. Today, Larissa is a Yale graduate married to a U.S. citizen.
4 years ago, I went up there with the purpose of asking people to recognize my humanity and the humanity of people in my community. But now, 4 years later, I see that it's about accountability. The Trump years brought a lot of clarity for me in terms of what it is that we're up against, how bad it can really get.
But Larissa also believes the past 4 years have brought the country to a reckoning about racism and inequality that she says is long overdue.
It taught me to trust more in people in my community. I am actually very full of hope, and I'm very excited for what's to come because I really think the change is fast approaching.
The younger teenagers also feel that change is in the air and hope the new administration will lead us out of the dark days of division.
I feel like they have a lot of work to do. I feel like we need to, as one, come together because at the end of the day, yes, we may not be the same color, we may not be from the same families, but it's our community, it's our home. We need to work together and fix our country.
When Francis Bellamy was writing his first draft of the Pledge of Allegiance, he struggled with one phrase more than any other. How, he wondered, do you describe concisely the United States of America? His answer in 3 words: one nation, indivisible. For despite our many differences, we are united by common goals, including free and fair elections, peaceful transfers of power, and yes, liberty and justice for all. The celebrations of the 59th inaugural continue now with a star-studded special. Celebrating America, hosted by Tom Hanks, is next here on CBS. I'm Norah O'Donnell. Good night.